Years of YouTube watching led me to this moment.
MicroJig, maker of the gripper.
Or in this case, the MatchFit system, made by
MicroJig.
It's a clamping system that uses dovetail tracks instead of T-tracks. But is it really worth the hype and the price?
Why not just use a T-track or T-track bit?
According to a video made by MicroJig, T-tracks are crap. Wood or metal, doesn't matter. Weirdly, they never tested their own system in that same video.
So today, we're gonna pull a Paul and test everything.
T-tracks, dovetails, MDF, plywood, strength, durability, price.
Everything. Why?
Because I messed up when making this bench. Clamping to the top, not a problem. But clamping to the sides? Houston, we have a problem. We are going to fix this with a jig that does more than just clamp. But first, we test. So we know how to build it right. So to put it nicely, the MicroJig test was pretty pointless. It felt like one of those late night infomercials, goofy, overly dramatic, and not super helpful. Here's their system, running the same test. And shocker, it failed. And it's always going to, because whether it's dovetail or T-track, metal or wood, this setup wasn't designed to clamp air. It needs some material to provide equal amounts of hold down pressure. What is this? More on this in a moment. For now, just know that the metal track had no problem handling over 200 kilograms of clamping force. That's over 400 pounds. Now, metal tracks can definitely handle more side pressure than wooden tracks. To be fair to MicroJig, they weren't lying about metal tracks getting pulled up easily. It only took 18 kilograms, or roughly 40 pounds, to lift the track due to the small screws required for attaching them. Easy solution. Add super glue or 5-minute epoxy to reinforce the bond. Don't forget to rough up the track before gluing it. It helps the adhesive actually stick. I almost forgot to do it. Also, wear gloves. Seriously, don't be like me. This is a load cell. When you apply pressure to this metal brick, it sends a signal to this yellow box. Well, technically to a load cell amplifier, which then passes the data to an Arduino, which tells us right here on this display exactly how much force it takes to break a track. Also, it's in kilograms, not pounds. Because I didn't code this thing, I have no idea how to code. I just followed a video I found on YouTube to make this. If you're interested, I've linked the video and the parts I used down in the description. With the help of epoxy, it took 99 kilograms of force to rip the metal track out of the wood. That's a massive difference. So yeah, if you're using T-track and the material's too thin for long screws, add some epoxy. When installed correctly, wood track is as easy to set up and as strong as aluminum. Both dovetail and T-track can handle over 200 kilograms of clamping force in materials like plywood, MDF, and hardwood. They also perform well with pine, melamine, and even the most affordable, void-free material used in woodworking, OSB. Plus, there's no limit on length. Well, technically, from a certain point of view. But with all that, we haven't discussed price. A 48-inch section of track will run you about $20. Not terrible. But to use it for this jig, you'd need at least 4 intersection kits and probably 3 more 48-inch sections of track to be safe. Then you've still got to source screws, add epoxy, and yeah, the cost starts stacking up fast.
So that's a hard pass for using metal T-track for our jig.
You can make wooden tracks for as little as $10 per bit. You'll need 2 for the T-track. You'll want to start with a relief cut using a 5/16 inch straight bit. Then come back with a T-track bit that cuts 1/2 inch wide, 15/64 inch deep, and a 1/4 inch slot. Here, just check out the specs on screen. If you don't have a router table, no worries. I'll show you later how to do this without one. I mean, you'll still need a router, just not the table part. Now, MicroJig sells its dovetail bit for $28, and its matching relief cut bit for another $28.
So here's the deal. You don't need either.
Technically, you don't even need to make a relief cut. I'm not saying you should skip it, just that you could. However, the bit will wear out faster. But honestly, you can just grab a regular 1/4 inch straight bit. Same goes for the dovetail bit. A standard 14-degree 1/2 inch dovetail bit works just fine. Now, according to MicroJig, standard dovetail bits are trash. Now, they didn't say the trash part. That was me. I added that, just to be clear. Cutting against the grain will cause some tear out, but it sands away easily. The MicroJig bit does have a built-in 1/16 inch roundover, so you can skip the sanding. It's a premium feature. a little creature comfort. Is it $28 good? That's up to you. The primary factor that affects the durability of any jig is the material used to build it. According to MicroJig, the dovetail shape is superior to T-track because it spreads out the pressure evenly and not just perpendicular to the surface.
So let's examine if that claim actually holds true.
Let's start with plywood. The dovetail joint failed at 53 kilograms, while the T-track gave out at 48 kilograms. MDF. The dovetail broke at 48 kilograms. T-track, 35 kilograms. And in hardwood, the dovetail held until 106 kilograms, with the T-track failing at 108 kilograms. The hardwood board split more than the dovetail joint actually failed, so I tried the test again, but the board completely split. Then I finally stopped being lazy, cut a new piece, and ran the test. Again. Honestly, after seeing the hardwood results, the plywood and MDF were kind of a letdown.
But I've heard that you can make them even stronger if you give them the old Jose Canseco treatment. You know, give them a little juice.
A Jose Canseco bat? Tell me, you didn't pay money for this.
It's simple, dries in seconds, and adds strength. We're talking thin CA glue. But the real question is, how much strength? For the T-track, the raw numbers are pretty clear. Plywood went up by 13 kilograms, and MDF got bumped up by 20 kilograms. Now let's check out the dovetail slots. Plywood increased by 24 kilograms, and MDF was close behind at 23 kilograms. Not bad, but we're just getting started. If you add a layer of medium CA glue over the thin glue, the strength jumps way up, but not equally. The T-track in plywood shoots up by an additional 34 kilograms, but MDF, just a measly 3 kilogram gain. Dovetails tell a similar story. We saw an additional boost of 11 kilograms for the plywood, but again, MDF only gained 3 kilograms. For MDF, honestly, adding medium glue isn't worth your time. Yes, it adds a bit of strength, but not enough to justify the extra step. You'll need to cut your slots slightly wider because that extra glue layer makes things tight. In some cases, too tight. So what about the misfits? Pine, you could, but let's be honest. No. Melamine, surprisingly strong, but also no. OSB, weirdly also strong, but sadly no. What about using track clamps in a dovetail groove? Great idea. Until you try it. They don't fit. Sure, you could widen the dovetail, but honestly, it's not worth the extra steps. It seems that regardless of the material used or the tricks employed, dovetail remains the overall winner. But let's be real, it wasn't a blowout win. Unless we're talking about the hardwood. That one? Yeah, that was wild. Now, I'd love to use hardwood for this jig, but the cost and the potential for wood movement make it just not practical for me. But also, I didn't want to mill any wood right now, so I'm gonna pass. We are going to make the jig out of plywood and MDF. I laminated some scrap 1/2 inch Baltic birch plywood to a 1/2 inch sheet of MDF. Why? Partly because I already had them on hand. Partly because I didn't want to drive over an hour into Houston and back, and because I'm cheap. Mostly that last one. It doesn't hurt that I wanted the extra thickness, since I'll be using this as a kind of twin screw vise.
Welcome. You've got mail.
I tested a sample piece, and the Baltic birch combo handled 157 kilograms of clamping force. Side note, I was going to make a second jig with 3/4 inch MDF. I'd already laminated a 1/4 inch hardboard to it, figuring the extra thickness would let me cut a deeper T-track. I tested it and found that it handled 62 kilograms of force. Not bad, but once I saw the Baltic birch results, I thought,
Why waste the time? Sometimes you just gotta realize when you're overdoing it.
now I came into making this video not particularly liking the MatchFit system. I don't know if you could tell or not. Mainly because of the price. Their dovetail clamps are expensive, and they only work with their system. If you want to use them as a regular track clamp, you're out of luck. Well, not really. Here's a simple fix. Just file down these high spots, boom. Now it works as a regular track clamp too. Standard track clamps, while not always cheap, depending on which brand you get, are still usually more affordable than the MicroJig ones. Side note, you can actually turn both styles of clamps into standard F-style clamps with a little DIY. You've already got the bits, you'll need some glue, and you probably already got some scraps you can use to make some non-marring pads. Boom. Now your clamps are even more versatile. That said, there's something to be said for a system that just works. With the MatchFit system, you know, right out of the plastic they come in, they will fit in a Dovetail track, every time. With track clamps, there's always a little variation, so you either have to oversize your track slots just in case, or only buy from one brand and cross your fingers that their manufacturing tolerances stay the same.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but with all the sizing issues and all the extra steps that come with the T-Tracks, I would suggest that you go with the Dovetail system and get this router bit, but save some money and go ahead and just get a regular 1/4 inch straight cut bit.
I'm making my jig the same size as the front of my workbench, but you can definitely go longer if you want. Before I started routing the lines, I needed to mark where I was going to attach the jig to the workbench. To attach the jig, I'm going to use T-nuts, just like I did in my upgraded extension wing video. Start with a pilot hole that matches the thickness of the bolt. That way, the bolt has a nice friction fit and doesn't just fall out when you remove the jig. Then you drill a slightly larger hole for the barrel of the T-nut. Normally, you'd hammer the T-nut in, but in tight spaces like this, just tighten the bolt from the outside. It'll pull the T-nut snugly into place from the inside. Now that the attachment points are bored and drilled, I can mark where the dovetail grooves will go. Because obviously, we don't want a bolt sitting in the middle of a track. Using a router table makes things faster and easier, but I promise to show you how to do it without one, and I intend to keep my word. Just so you know, I may have made a few mistakes along the way, or maybe I did it on purpose to provide you with a learning opportunity. Who's to know? Smoke when using a router is not a good sign. Lesson 1. Make sure you really tighten your router bit before using it. Failure to do so can result in the bit slipping, which is undesirable. When routing these vertical lines, don't go all the way through the wood, stop half an inch from the edge. We'll get into the why shortly. We're about to hit the next lesson. I cut the first 2 horizontal dovetails just fine, and figured no need to record the third. Lesson 2. Check your measurements one more time. We all have days like this. Thankfully, my day was on a jig and not a finished piece. Here's where I realized I messed up. Again, lesson 3. I said not to route the horizontal lines all the way through the wood. Did I write that down so I would remember to? Yes. Did I look at my notes that day? Nope. But did I remember after the first one? Yes. Too little, but not too late. That gives you a hard stop, so your clamp never slides too far and accidentally hits a blade. Plus, it acts like a built-in safety stop when you're using the jig like a vise. I'm going to round over all the corners except for the bottom edge. That flat edge makes it way easier to line up boards when you're using this as a tapering jig. To make the jig glide smoothly, I'm adding a little paste wax to the bottom. Nothing fancy, just to help it move cleanly across the surface. Very nice. I'd give it a solid 9.7 out of 10, mostly because I built it. If you thought the mistakes were over, you're right, sort of. But before we get to that, let me just say, this thing attaches super easily to the front of my bench, and it holds great. Fingers crossed this video does well, so I can afford a few more clamps. Okay, last lesson, the bottom holes, no bolts. Why? Because I measured wrong. Turns out you don't need 2 bolts on top either. Just one here and one here would have been perfect.
But what do you think? Are you sold on the MatchFit system, or are you going to stick with good old T-Track? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Joseph with 5 Duck Studio. I hope to see you next time. Wouldn't be the same without you.